Hi everybody! Welcome to Campfire Discussions with Brandy. So today we have a lot to talk about, and I wanted to start it off with a little light note. Oh, that's cool. I can see my comment on the screen. Yeah, please feel free to comment on here, because if you send your comments in live, I will see it on the screen and you can interact directly with me, and you won't want to miss what we're talking about tonight. There's unfortunately a lot of stories like this mom, Jeannette Cooper, I'm not sure how to pronounce it properly. And it's really, really horrifying. But before we get to the sad stuff and the scary stuff for parents, I thought I'd ring in a couple jokes for you guys. So, my producer is going to help me because I'm going to ask him, Joel, what did the Pink Panther say when he stepped on that ant? Didn't, didn't. I know that's goofy, but hey. We have to have a little fun, okay? I know the guys keep telling me mine is so serious and shocking all the time, and they get to have a lot of fun and tell a lot of jokes and laugh a lot, and mine seems to be a lot more serious. So I thought we'd start with a joke or two. Maybe I'll do another one later, but so we've been talking a lot about the system indoctrinating our kids, separating families. And I have a theory on this before I tell you these stories. And a lot of what I'm talking tonight are real life stories about what's actually happening to families in our country of America. And my theory is that we're talking about the schools indoctrinating our kids, these teachers coming in and blatantly going against policy, or having policies to affirm these children with, if they want to be a different gender or something that their parents might not agree with. These schools are purposely keeping it from the parents. They're reaffirming this with the children, and they're keeping it quiet. It's to me, this is grooming to the utmost degree. It's grooming. It's cult-like behavior. And I firmly believe that they're doing this because children with firm family foundations are harder to indoctrinate. They're harder to push towards a certain direction. They're harder to control because they're more solid in who they are. And so if they find a way to break that stronghold, break that comfort, that safe place, and make their safe place unsafe in their eyes, then they're easier to maneuver and make them do what they want. And that is a scary thought. And that's happening all over. So the title of tonight is about blackmail, because I heard this story about a mom from Chicago that was literally blackmailed by the courts. So to get to that story, we have to start kind of in the beginning. It's a little bit of a long story. I'm going to try not to read too much, but I have to refer to my notes because I'm not a good memorizer. Yeah, my brain doesn't work that way. Jay says, I wonder if removing vocational classes is part of this agenda. Wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, especially in places like here in Oregon, the Pacific Northwest. We're known for our tech schools, our vocational training. A lot of our jobs are in those fields. They're vocational type things. They're working with your hands, and taking that option away in the school system, the public school system, makes it harder for them, and it forces them into the college institutions where it's even more indoctrination. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, Jay. So in this case, there's a mother. Her name is Jeannette Cooper. I know I'm going to butcher this name. For some reason, that's a hard name for me to say. And she's lost all parental rights because she refused to accept her daughter as trans. Now, you may ask, how does this happen? Well, we have to go back to, we're going to talk a little bit about who Jeannette Cooper is, and you'll be shocked to find out that this is happening to her as well. We're going to talk about how this went down. So Jeannette Cooper, she's 44 years old. She's been an educator her whole career. She considers herself a loving and responsible mother of Sophia, who now is inching up to age 16. But at age 12, she suddenly claimed to be transgender. Jeannette was skeptical. Sophia had never exhibited these signs before. In fact, Sophia seemed to be more traditionally female than her own mother, Jeannette. and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But she insisted that she was trans, and she insisted she was unsafe around Jeannette. Now, if we read more into the story, you find out that Sophia went to her father's house. So her father and her mother, Jeannette, divorced in 2015, and this is when this started going down. I believe 2017 is when this started. No, 2019. I'm sorry. I had my dates mixed up. So in 2015, mom and dad separated. In 2019, when Sophia was 12, she went to her dad's house for her, her regular visitation time with her dad. And she told her dad and her stepmom that she felt unsafe around her mom because she is now transgender and her mom doesn't support it, so that she is unsafe. Now, to me, this feels like the ending of a period of time that this stepmother and father pushed some ideas on their child to say that mom was unsafe, because a child doesn't think that their parent is unsafe or isn't going to support them unless they're told that by either one or the other. And when you hear Jeannette's story, you can tell she's not that parent. You go more into detail, and it basically says at this point right now, Jeannette can't visit her daughter. She can't communicate with her daughter via phone calls. She lives about 10 minutes away from her. The only communication she is allowed with Sophia is by the U.S. mail, all because she insists that Sophia is a girl. So Jeannette, the mom, shaves her hair, but not her legs. She doesn't wear bras. She purchases clothing regardless of whether they're sold in the men's or women's department. She jokes that if you subscribe to traditional gender stereotypes, she's the one people would think was transgender. But that is precisely how Jeannette raised her daughter, outside the confines of these traditional stereotypes. She doesn't care for political labels, but she considers herself a radical feminist and has voted Democrat in every election since she was 18. When addressed between this discrepancy between her political beliefs and her views on sex and gender ideology, she says, quote, "The difference between libertarianism and anarchy is a fine line." Another word I have trouble with, apparently. So she is the typical person that you would never think this institution would go after, right? She seems understanding. She's on the liberal side of things, the progressive side of things. But even she understands that there's a difference between loving and supporting your child and helping them through something, and following them into a pit and allowing them to radically change their bodies, and they're in turn harming themselves. So she divorced in 2015. When the parenting agreement was granted, she had custody of Sophia 6 days and 7 nights a week. And so the dad barely had her, basically. So Sophia had a hard time with the divorce, but her and her daughter were really close, homeschooling for a period of time, and they bonded a lot with homeschooling and going on trips and their shared progressive politics. I mean, this is crazy to me. Sapat says, reminds me of a gal I talked to a while ago. Her daughter decides to become a boy because she's a tomboy that acts like and thinks like a boy. How is that possible? Yeah, I mean, wait till you hear this, you guys. I mean, so it doesn't make sense, because right now the world is telling girls that if they are tomboys, like my daughter's a tomboy, then you must be a boy. Not that you just happen to like things that boys like, and that's okay. So on July 22nd, 2019, when Sophia was then 12 years old, she went on a regular custodial visit with her dad, and this is when this whole thing went down. She went and told her stepmom and her dad that she was transgender and she didn't feel safe with mom. The next morning, Jeannette, for the very first time, heard that Sophia identified as a transgender and did not feel safe in her care. Jeannette didn't understand this. She didn't know what to do. She also had no idea this was going on. After 8 days of her ex-husband violating their parent agreement, Jeannette filed an emergency petition to have her daughter returned to her custody. Sophia's father responded in court documents alleging that due to burgeoning adolescence and awakening awareness of self, Sophia was no longer mentally and emotionally safe in Jeannette's home. He asked for all parenting time, all decision-making authority and requested that the court prohibit Jeannette from seeing and communicating with Sophia unless he and a court-ordered child representative agreed. And the court sided with the dad, pending investigation. All right? So the mom sees this happening. So you've got dad, and oh, by the way, stepmom is like a psychologist. Okay? Stepmom knows exactly how to brainwash this child. Stepmom knows exactly what words to use in the courts. Stepmom knew exactly what to do to get this to go their way. So imagine you're Jeannette. What would you do? Right? How do you handle this? What's next? So she decided to send a letter to her daughter, affirming her new identity, calling her by her chosen name, Ash. And then all of a sudden she's told, well, that was the wrong decision too. Confused, she realized that this was much worse than she thought, and this was going down a different path. It had nothing to do with what they claimed it had to do with, right? It has to do more of separating her from that mother bond, and more of, if you don't fall in line, we're going to punish you, basically. So the courts ordered family therapy, which Jeannette was super excited about. She was excited to have family therapy, but the court forced Jeannette to have this family therapy only if stepmom was allowed to be involved in every aspect. And if Jeannette did not agree for stepmom to be involved in every aspect, then they would not allow her to see her daughter at all, even with therapy. So mom agreed. And unfortunately, this therapy did not reconcile them, clearly because stepmom is obviously a problem and obviously causing harm. Okay, so now we get to the investigation. So dad claimed, ex-husband claimed, their daughter felt unsafe around her mother. The court ordered a comprehensive custody investigation. So the investigation, Jeannette believed, would clear her of any wrongdoing. She was a former teacher, Jeannette, and now a PhD candidate in education at DePaul University. She has trouble making sense of the allegation that her daughter is unsafe around her. She spent entire adult life surrounded by children, but nevertheless, she let the investigation go through. She thought it was the right thing to do for the court to keep her from mom while they did the investigation, because she knew she was safe, the court didn't know that. So she followed everything they told her to do. And she wasn't angry. She didn't cause problems. She went through everything. This was a 7-month investigation conducted by a licensed clinical psychologist, required psychological testing, home visits for both, and hours of interviews with each parent. Now, after that report came out, Jeannette thought that it was going to resolve itself. Clearly, there is no finding of abuse or neglect. They didn't find anything about her that was unsafe. But the thing that she clearly is not complying with this concept that good parenting means that you affirm the child's claim and there's something wrong with their body. And she was not willing to do that. She was not willing to affirm that. And because of that, even though they found no findings of unsafe environment, they found no findings of neglect, because she was not willing to affirm that, they called her a bad parent and unsafe. So anyways, it goes on and on and on about this. The biggest thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about was last year, when her parenting time still suspended and therapy at a standstill, Jeannette voluntarily entered into a new agreement to avoid a prolonged hearing that she feared would end with the same result. After nearly 3 years, she didn't want to put her daughter or herself through more trauma, and I think you know where I'm getting at. Under the terms of the final agreement, Sophia is to remain in her father's custody with no visitation rights for Jeannette, without a court order or unless her ex-husband agrees. Despite repeated requests for Jeannette to see her daughter, she has yet to see her. Since this all began, she's missed her 13th, 14th, and 15th, and now almost her 16th birthday. So, in return for her giving up her ability to spend time with her daughter, Jeannette negotiated for a legal commitment that Sophia would not medically transition without a court order or Jeannette's written permission. She also retained the ability to contact Sophia by postal mail. And she says this, people who are imprisoned for murder have more communication with their child than Jeannette does. She has had, in the last 3 years, she has had a total of 8.5 hours time with her kid. And this mom was blackmailed by the courts and by her ex-husband and by this horrid stepmom who has the knowledge of how to manipulate this whole situation. She was blackmailed in order to save her daughter from going under the knife and mutilating her body. She was blackmailed into giving up her rights to see her. Now, if that's not a mother's love, I don't know what is. I mean, that as a mom, I could not even imagine being faced with that choice of I either fight to see my daughter and they have the right to mutilate her, or I say, you know what, as her mom, it's ultimately my job to protect her, even if that means protecting her by not seeing her. I mean, I can't even. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about that. Yeah, Joel hired the best attorney money could buy. Yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this story. There's a lot more where this came from. There's more and more. Jeannette decided to tell her story. Before I get to the sponsor, I want to just tell you a little bit of this because I think it's eye-opening. According to a June 2022 Pew survey, 5.1% of adults younger than 30 identify as transgender or non-binary. Roughly half of adults younger than 30 say they personally know someone who identifies as transgender, and about 1 in 10 adults say they know someone younger than 18 who identifies as transgender. Now, they say 85 to 90% of children who identify as transgender pre-puberty, if they are allowed to go through their natural puberty, ultimately come out of that. They ultimately decide that the transgender thing is not really what they felt. Now, if they're hindered and harmed and put through forced hormone blockers and different sex drugs, like different hormones that for the other sex, and they're going through all these things and change their bodies, that's when this becomes a huge problem. So those numbers don't lie. And also 75% of people across the board, Democrat or Republican, and as you can see, this mom too, she's a progressive Democrat, 75% of people believe that we have gone too far with this, that this is out of hand. It's insane. So before I get on to the next story, and it's unbelievable how many stories like this there are, let's talk about one of our sponsors. We've got an amazing sponsor here locally called Whitney Signs. They are incredible. They love our community, and they do incredible work that is top notch. All of our stickers, our signs, everything that we need of that in that area come from them, and they last forever. This included, that flag back there was made by them. So check out this video. Okay. Hi, Mary. Okay, Mary Whitney right there. She's one of the owners of Whitney Signs. She's awesome. She's an artist, and she's incredible at what she does. So check them out. And yes, the best mayor ever. I agree. 100%. So I wanted to leave you guys with a thought before I move on to the next story that's similar to what we're hearing here. As parents, it's not our job to do what these courts are saying. Basically, these courts are saying it's our job as parents to follow our children blindly down the path that they are choosing and just go with them and let them lead. It's not our job to do that. It's not our job to blindly follow them into their confusion and let them lead us. As parents, it's our job to be their lighthouse. It's our job to see around corners for them, to guide them past the roadblocks that they cannot see that will harm them in their lives. It is our job to protect them from themselves sometimes, from this indoctrination, from this radical ideology that's taking over and is only here to harm our kids. These things are put in place to divide and conquer our children, to harm them, to stop them from having kids, by the way, doing all this crazy hormone treatment. can make your children not able to have children. It will stop them from having kids. It'll do a lot more than that too. So think about that. It's not our job to let the child lead us down their emotional crazy train. It is our job to protect them from all the craziness in the world. And this mom is doing that to the best of her ability, and I can't even imagine being in her boat. And I'm praying for her. And you know what? She might have different political beliefs than me, but she's a mom, and she's a darn good one from what I can see. And I'm hoping that she finds a way through this. They don't tell kids all the risks. Someone needs to hold them accountable. Yeah, I agree with that. They don't. And they don't tell the parents the risks either. They don't. So I have several stories here. I'm going to skip over one of these because I wanted to get to another one. And there are pictures along with these stories. Joel has a few pictures of the one I just talked about where you could see the mama that is going through that. And maybe he'll pull them up while I'm looking for my notes here. Okay. Yeah, see, there's the mama and her daughter, Sophia. Okay, so another article, yep, that's where I pulled the article. That's where I pulled the information from, was that article right there on the Daily Signal. And that one as well, Independent Women's Forum. Those were the articles we read to get this information to you guys. Mary says, we really need a new conservative president. Things were crazy in the 70s until President Reagan was elected. Yes, and Mary and I were talking about that today because we were talking about how the 70s was like all this free love and drugs and all this craziness. And then Reagan got in, and then the conservatives really buckled down and started focusing on families and Christianity and faith and kind of righted that train. And unfortunately, right now, it feels like our churches are not doing their job. The institution of the church is not. So now we as people and conservative and Christians and Jesus followers need to start doing it for ourselves, because if we don't do it, no one will. We need to start standing up for our kids and standing up for what's right. Jay says, there is a reason we put helmets on our kids, so when they crash and fall and fail, they can live and learn from it. Who's letting these kids do this with no helmet, no protection at all? Yeah, that's very true. That's exactly what this is like. Maybe someone can experiment on them one day. Yep, that's what this is. One big ass experiment. And I'm sorry, but sometimes you gotta curse. Okay, so another article I read today was talking about how gender ideology is separating families of faith from their children. And it goes on, okay, so think of this. A Catholic mom in Northern California enrolled her daughter in a public charter school. During her initial Zoom classes, the girl, an incoming freshman who had not yet even set foot in the school because of COVID-19, was asked her name and her preferred pronouns. She chose a male name and male pronouns. The school then used this information without informing her parents. Now, this is in California, and this talks about things that are going on in California. The parents voiced their dismay with school officials. Child Protective Services showed up at the doorstep because they said they were upset with the school. Tell me how that's reasonable. It's bad enough that the government divides us by ethnicity and race or language. Most of our schools and law enforcement also can be leveraged to divide our families, even separating parents from children, enforcing these radical gender ideals. So another thing you might not know is this new gender category of non-binary, it is on all student information forms in California. It's moving into Oregon and all these other states. And a lot of people don't realize what this means. Non-binary means unlimited gender choices. So basically, this can include things such as transgender, non-gender, intersex, agender, genderqueer, gender fluid, pangender, and more. So this whole system that's allowing these things to be adopted is picking and choosing every little way they can sort these kids into these little boxes and separate them further and further and further from their family, their faith, their home base, their safe place, to make them weak, to make them afraid, to make them easily moldable into what they want them to be. And this is just, it's continuing to get out of hand more and more and more. it talks about this Orthodox Jew in California, member of a 1,500 member Rabbi Alliance of America and senior rabbi fellow at the 2,000 member Coalition for Jewish Values. He talks about himself and devout Catholics, Protestants, and varying denominations, faithful Muslims, Hindus, and others who share family values similar to ours. Together, they oppose the erosion of parental rights as well as deceptions perpetuated through public education today, and they're fighting for it right now. Sacramento and the local school boards must confer on parents the exclusive right to mentor their children on gender matters. If they do not, parents will begin to exit public schools in great numbers. Well, as we're finding too, it's happening in more than public schools now. Like this one that I just talked about was in a, I don't think it was a private school, but it was a Catholic school that this happened in. The one where she decided that she was a male with male pronouns, and then they didn't tell the parents. So it's bleeding into even our private schools. I mean, it's just going way, way, way too far. And I have another story to tell you, but I thought I'd tell you a joke first, so hold on. Sorry, I have so many notes tonight. I told Joel I have to write all these notes because I forget everything. A people divided cannot stand against their oppressors. That's exactly right. And it is hot in here. I don't know how the guys did this last night. Jim says the United States passport is next, male, female, or X. It is so frustrating. Yes, it is. I mean, I think they already have it on all the medical stuff here in Oregon. From what I've been seeing, is you have more options now for your gender. I believe our driver's license have changed. I mean, it's everywhere. It's spreading. And this is a tiny percentage of people. And like I told you before, 75% of Americans, whether they're Democrat or Republican, it doesn't matter. 75% of Americans realize this is going too far. So why are we still following it? Stand up, because clearly we have the majority, but we don't believe we do because we're listening to this small, tiny group of people that are yelling and screaming so loud and calling us names. And God forbid we be called names. I mean, oh well, we still need to stand up and fight this. It's getting old. And if we don't, it's just going to get worse and worse. Look how bad it's gotten so far. Okay, so do you guys know what the hardest part about being vegan is? Anyone? It's keeping it to yourself. Anyways. Oh my goodness. Okay, so my next story is a Tallahassee mom. Jay said, Jim, that's the way it is for our Estacada schools right now. For enrollment, we have to choose between male, female, or X. Yep, that is true because they just sent out the new enrollment stuff, and I have to fill out all this paperwork for Riley, and it has some stuff on there I'm not too happy to see. Joel said they will see the majority during the election. Let's hope so, okay? Everybody get out and vote, please. It is so important. It might not be a presidential election, but it is a very, very important election. We need to make a change, like major. I mean, not just Oregon, all over, but Oregon really needs it because we are like this close to being California. I mean, we might as well be. So this Tallahassee mom, she says gender ideology almost destroyed her family. So her story is very similar. She picked up her daughter at Deer Lake Middle School in Tallahassee, Florida on one September afternoon last year. Her daughter revealed she was interviewed by school officials about gender preferences. She was asked by officials about changing her name and also about what restroom she preferred to use. Now, I want to know what got to that point. What made them decide we're going to yank this little girl out and ask her, are your parents affirming your gender? Do you believe you're a different gender? Do you want to use a different restroom, or do you have different pronouns? School officials were doing this to this child in middle school, no less. Joel says he's hungry. Yeah, I'm hungry too. Jay says, not if we don't get out and vote and drag our friends and family and neighbors to vote. Exactly. We have to get out there and vote. If you sit on your butt and you don't vote and you don't speak up and you don't start making a change, then you're part of the problem. I have no shame in saying that. So anyways, they came in, they talked to her daughter, these officials, berating her about all these questions. She happens to be her mom, Little John. What was her first name again? January Littlejohn is the mom. She's a mother of 3, and she's also a licensed mental health counselor. She was shocked that this meeting took place without her knowledge. She had previously informed school officials about the family situation. Her daughter was experiencing stress about her gender at the height of the pandemic, and the family was completely caught by surprise. Family found a counselor and began researching the issue. And now school officials had intervened between her and her daughter over this personal issue. So this mom was doing the right thing, right? She was getting counseling. They were discussing it. Did she say, I don't support my daughter? Did she say she's crazy, nuts? Did she say we don't love her? No, she's doing what a mom would do when you have a mental health issue, getting her counseling, working it out with the family. It's a very personal situation. And the school felt that they had the right to intervene. This is part of the problem. Stop talking about pizza on there. I will get to it. I know we have to get to, okay, fine. So now that he screwed up my flow, we'll talk about pizza and then we'll get back to the story because he just messed up my whole thought process.
Awkward.
So hold that thought and check out this video of this awesome pizza place here in Estacada. Okay, so Joel was trying to get me some air, so there's a good reason why we had to intervene there. Okay, so, yeah, Hitch and Post is the best. We love Valerie. She's amazing. She's wonderful, kind, and her pizza is really, really, really good. Okay, so this mom is shocked, right, that the school intervened in a very personal matter. She calls the school. The answer she's received from the school officials made her more concerned. She was told they could not disclose what occurred at the meeting with her daughter. They said that Little John's 13-year-old daughter had to give consent by law for her and her husband to be notified or present at the meeting. Okay, 13, right? Here in Oregon, I believe it's 14 they can do that. Keep that in mind. After several weeks back and forth with the district, they were finally able to meet with the principal. They were finally shown the transgender, gender nonconforming student support plan. That's a mouthful. That was created and signed by their daughter. The student support plan was a 6-page document that her daughter completed with the vice principal, the guidance counselor, and a social worker, all of which her parents had never met. I mean, I think they had met the vice principal, but they had never met the guidance counselor or the social worker. They gave the daughter sole authority to decide if her parents could be notified of the meeting or to attend. The officials allowed Little John's daughter to change her name and pronouns, restroom preference, and even choose if she chose to room with males or females at overnight school field trips. Okay? I wasn't supposed to tell you guys that I got air, but you know what? We're all overheating right now, so that's okay. And the minute the school tried that, she would be homeschooled the next day. Exactly same. But here's the thing. This is what's happening in these schools. Before I finish this story, say this happened, right? Say this happened here in Oregon and to our daughter, for example, and they let her make all these choices, and then we called the school. We found out about it, and we ripped her out of school. You know what would happen? CPS would be at our front door. That is how ridiculously over-involved these systems are, the schools and the government and DHS, which I'm going to talk about DHS next week because I've learned some stuff that is really scary that we're going to get into. So I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole right now. But seriously, it's leaving parents with very few choices but to disappear with their child. I mean, it's that desperate. It's crazy. So, okay. The plan also stated to use her birth name when speaking to the parents in order to deceive the parents, okay? And to make them not realize that a social transition was happening at school. Little John eventually discovered that the school policy directed officials not to contact parents when discussing gender-related issues with the students. So that's the school's policy across the board. Do not contact the parents. Oh well, the parents are left in the dark. We're going to divide these kids from their parents. We're going to keep them in the dark, and we're going to continue to tell the children that their parents don't understand them and make them come closer to us so we can do what we want with them. That's grooming, by the way. That's grooming. Anyways, so the guide also noted that the children have legally protected right to keep their parents from this information regarding their gender identity and steps taken by the district to affirm that identity. Little John is warning parents about her experience and the consequences. She said the policies that relate to gender are driving a very dangerous wedge between children and their parents. Exactly what I've been talking about for how long now? They're trying to separate our children from us. They're trying to make our children afraid of us. They're trying to make the safest place for our children is with us. No one can love your child more than you. And they're trying to take that away from your child because that weakens them, that breaks them down. That's so bad. And if you can't see that, you got to open your eyes to this. It's crazy. She said the guidelines also send the message to the child that the parents are the enemy, which is also what I've been saying. So Little John went on to say that this impacts all types of families, every race, religion, everyone, and her experience in Leon County is not an isolated incident. Clearly, look at all these stories we're talking about. She said there are at least 12 Florida school districts that have the same exact guidance, same wording on their website today. Little John's call to action is for parents to get comfortable having conversations related to gender, and she notes it's important to do research and be informed, but also be willing to stand up and talk to these people and say no, regardless of what kind of blackmail, like we've seen, or bullying you receive. Little John recently filed a federal lawsuit against the Leon County School Board, and she said it's because she wants to protect the rights of parents to raise their child without the interference of government officials, which I think everyone can relate to. Yeah. That's this. What's crazy to me is all these stories I'm talking about tonight, they're not isolated stories. They're not. There's so many of them happening. I urge all of you to start looking into your local school board's policies on this stuff. Look into it. Look up what their policy is on children questioning their gender. Do they have the similar policy of deceiving the parents, of keeping the parents out of the loop, of affirming this stuff to the children and not allowing parents to know what's going on, of trying to create this wedge? Because you might be shocked to realize that most of these schools are following these policies. They're going down this path, and it's really, really scary. The best action to fix this is to remove these jokes from office, put in people who care about the people they represent. Yep, time for the red tidal wave. Yes, but we need people to get out and vote in order for that to happen. And unfortunately, conservatives are very known for being quiet and turning the other cheek. Well, we can't be quiet anymore. We have to get loud because it has to stop. We have to stop this. So before I go on, I'm just checking to see if I'm missing anything here because I guarantee you I'm getting yelled at on Messenger right now. Oh, maybe not. Woohoo! And I'm sorry I'm not painting tonight, okay? I've been trying to paint when I can, but I'm noticing that I don't really need we started the painting to give me something special, but lately I've been realizing that I have so much to say and I have so many notes to look through. I wouldn't be able to read my notes and make sure I'm telling the story appropriately while painting at the same time. So, oh well, sometimes I'll paint, but not all the time. And that's a better angle, thank you. I didn't like the other angle of me. Anyways, so I wanted to talk to you guys also about Nancy Pelosi's Gender Equality Act that she brought to the House, which, by the way, passed in the House by like 238 votes, but it's still sitting in the Senate as of February 2021, okay? This Equality Act is turning the law into a sword against doctors that don't follow it, against parents, and it's allowing these kinds of policies to take place. It's making parents have their children taken away. It's causing these problems, and it hasn't even gone into effect. But these are the kinds of policies these school boards are following. Jay says, fire career politicians, all the Pelosi's, Bushes, Cheneys, Schiffs, they all need to go. Yeah, I agree with that. We need some new blood in there. People that actually give a crap, that aren't career politicians, because career politicians aren't in it for the people anymore. And unfortunately, as you go further and further into it, you can see the longer they've been there, the more jaded they are, the more they're focused on things they shouldn't be focused on. And I know a lot of politicians have forgotten that they work for us. Now, we have some awesome local politicians here, and hopefully some of you do too, but you can start locally by voting for those people that you believe actually care about what you have to say, that are actually going to represent you, that are actually going to listen to you and fight for you instead of berate you and make you feel like crap and push their own ideas on you. We have both kinds in our local politics, and it's very clear that the ones that are there for the community and the ones that aren't. Joel said, just a note, the heat may cause small bandwidth issues. Please bear with us. Sorry, guys, if that's the case. And money, that's all they care about. Yep. So back to this Gender Equality Act that Nancy Pelosi has put into the House, passed in the House, and is waiting in the Senate. The Senate hopefully will not let it go through. So some states have already passed laws similar to Pelosi's Equality Act. In New Jersey and California, transgender activists have sued Catholic hospitals for discrimination on the basis of gender identity because they wouldn't perform sex change surgeries for patients with gender dysphoria. These lawsuits were enabled by state anti-discrimination laws that treat sexual orientation and gender identity, blah, 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 blah. The text of the Equality Act that was introduced to the 116th Congress did the same. Pelosi's bill added sexual orientation and gender identity to the 1964 Civil Rights Act, making hospitals and doctors across America vulnerable to costly litigation if they didn't follow the medical recommendations of the transgender movement. It would turn anti-discrimination law, which was meant to protect disenfranchised minority groups, into a coercive sword to threaten doctors into submission to transgender ideology. Does transgender ideology make for good medicine, do you guys think? Do you think that's good medical procedure, good medical practice? Part of the reason some doctors resist this ideology is that it's incompatible with good medicine and would do more harm than good, as we've seen with the numbers, okay? Children that have gender dysphoria pre-puberty, if they are treated with counseling and they are allowed to go through puberty that naturally occurring in their bodies, 85 to 90% of them grow out of this gender dysphoria. And those that are put on puberty blockers and given the wrong hormones and are going through sex changes and all this stuff are more likely to have suicidal ideation, and it's between 7 and 10 years after transition. These are the numbers we've researched time and time again, and they're still out there for all to see. If you look up the numbers, this is true. Transgender ideology is not good. The way they're making it go right now is not good medicine. It does do more harm than good. Joel said, sounds like a good way to lose more doctors in our country. Why are you closing up on my face? Maybe people in the Senate are smart enough to understand that. I hope so, but I don't have a lot of faith in that saying.
Awkward.
The American Psychological Association's Manual of Mental Disorder classifies gender dysphoria as a mental illness. Research shows, maybe I was wrong on my percentage, okay? Here, I'm correcting my percentage. 75 to 95% of children with gender dysphoria who go through puberty without any transgender treatments actually become comfortable with their bodies. That's coming from the American Psychological Association's information and stuff. The transgender movement ignores these statistics, aggressively pushing gender dysphoria children to be treated with non-FDA approved use of drugs, even though these side effects can include, but not limited to, loss of bone density, decline of cognitive ability, and infertility, like we've discussed before. They don't tell the kids this. They don't tell the parents this, by the way. This is all out there for everyone to research, but they're continuously pushing against it. They're continuously saying, oh, well, it doesn't matter what they say. We're not going to follow that. We're going to go with our feelings. Well, your feelings are not healthy in this situation. Before we go on further, we're going to take another break. We're going to talk about Fiverr, which Joel and Jim and Tony wanted to show the video last night. We didn't have it available, but we do now. Fiverr is really cool. Like Joel has said before, we were able to contract somebody to create this really awesome video game for our daughter when she lost her axolotl IV. And she loves it. She loves the game. They also do all kinds of stuff. So check out this video.
Hi, we're Fiverr, a global marketplace connecting individuals and businesses with freelancers offering thousands of digital services. Graphic design, web development, video editing, e-commerce marketing. You name it, there's a professional freelancer ready to make it happen. Filter your search by the service needed, budget, timeline, and boom! Fiverr provides a list of talented freelancers to meet your specific needs. Always know what you'll pay up front. No hourly rates, just project-based pricing. And because payment isn't released until you approve the work, you can rest assured that you'll be satisfied with the quality and get exactly what you want. Our support team is always available to answer questions or offer assistance when you need it. With the whole world of freelance talent at your fingertips, what might you achieve? Join today and find out. Fiverr. It starts here.
Wow, pretty cool, huh? Okay, so as we're talking about this, transgender activists have already tried to silence doctors who are warning patients about these dangers. The Human Rights Campaign, a leading LGBT group, devotes an entire website trying to discredit Dr. Paul McHugh, who was the former lead psychiatrist at Johns Hopkins University, who put a stop to the hospital's sex reassignment surgeries because he stated that the surgeries were fundamentally cooperating with a mental illness, which is what a lot of us have said, isn't it? Joel said prolonged use of female hormones will chemically castrate a guy. That is true. Absolutely. And if you look into one of the hormones that they're pushing on transgender children, lupine, I believe. It starts with an LUP. And I remember that because it's the first three letters of lupus. But anyways, if you look into these hormones that they're giving these children, they are the same exact drugs that they give to castrate pedophiles and to make it to where they can't harm children in that way. So think about that too. Transgender activists and pro-trans physicians often seek to exclude parents from the process of medical decision-making, as we're seeing in the schools as well. Cincinnati Children's Hospital's transgender health clinic says parents may be excluded from interviews because they might make their children feel uncomfortable asking questions. Or maybe is it that the parents might know better than the kids and are more aware of dangers and willing to ask the proper questions, and not because they're the bad guy who doesn't support their child, but maybe because they're watching out for their children. Maybe that's why they don't want the parents involved. Think about that. Remarkably, this clinic, the Cincinnati Children's Hospital Transgender Health Clinic, has deemed 100% of the patients seeking care to be appropriate candidates for continued gender treatment. That means every single child, every single adult. Well, sorry, that's a children's health clinic. So every single child that comes in there claiming they have gender dysphoria, every single one will receive these treatments, meaning stopping hormone blockers, different sex hormones, and moving towards the surgical treatments. Every single one, 100% of their patients that come in. Even the Ohio judge who terminated one couple's parental rights expressed concern at this astoundingly high approval rate. Transgender activists, of course, dismiss these concerns by sounding an alarm that gender dysphoric children will be at higher risk of suicide if they don't receive hormone treatment, which we have discussed time and time again is actually not the case. They're more susceptible to suicidal ideation 7 to 10 years after transition than they are if they are left alone and counseled through this. and allow their bodies to do what their bodies naturally do, instead of stopping that and harming that and throwing their chemical makeup all over the place. And it's called Lupron. Thank you. I knew it was LUP something. Jay said these hormones will also cause mental instability, often causing a violent reaction to the imbalance in an otherwise peaceful person of sound mind. This is true too. There's a ton of side effects, and Joel just put a website up there about that specific drug. I encourage you all to go look it up and read these side effects. That alone should be enough for parents to say, you know what? Maybe we should hold off. We'll support you, we'll love you, we'll counsel you, but we're not going to put our child through something that could hurt them this badly. It's not worth the risk, okay? No matter what your beliefs are, it's not worth the risk. And that's why 75% of Americans are saying it's gone too far. We need to stop this. The evidence suggests transgender treatments can actually increase the likelihood of suicide, as we've said. Here's another study. A study in Sweden on adults who underwent sex reassignment surgery showed that they were 19 times more likely than the general population to commit suicide after undergoing these operations. This is particularly noteworthy because in Sweden, cultural support for those who identify as transgender is very strong, so social stigma is less likely to account for these suicides. Also, think about this. They're 19 times more likely to commit suicide because they're being told by these doctors, these physicians, that all you have to do, that something is integrally wrong with your body, and all you have to do is have these surgeries, take these drugs, change your body, and you will feel better. And that's not the case. This is a mental illness. Telling somebody that cutting themselves up, mutilating their bodies, and changing their chemical makeup that is going to make them better is actually harming their mental health even more, because you're telling them something is wrong with them. You're telling them that God made a mistake with them. And then when they go through these surgeries and they go through all this horrible stuff, these side effects and these drugs and these surgeries, and they don't feel any different, that is what's causing so much harm to their mental health. Think about that. Anyways, so we talked about a lot tonight, and I encourage all of you to do research. Like I said, look into what your local school systems, your school boards, your elementary, middle school, high schools in your neighborhood, in your town, in your state are doing. Do the research. Find out. If you have a child in the school system, find out exactly what their policies are. Do whatever you can to protect them from them. And if you can't, pull them out. I know that's hard. We're teetering on those decisions too. We have a daughter that is going into 4th grade, and we have to make these decisions as parents. What is ultimately best for our children? And please do the research. Be proactive. Be involved in your child's life. Be involved in everything, and talk to your kids. Tell them that they are loved no matter what. Make sure they know that whatever they're being told by these people is not true. Make sure they know that you are their safe place, and prepare them. And it sucks we have to do that. It sucks we have to prepare our kids mentally for emotional warfare, but that's what's happening to our kids. And yes, whatever happened to telling them they're perfect the way they are, that is exactly what I'm talking about. So as a mom, I'm a little bit crazy about this, and I know I can be a little overboard, but I won't change that. With our daughter, we're always telling her she is beautifully made by our Creator, and that can never change. No matter what happens, no matter what she does, no matter how big or small she is, or tall or short, whatever, she is perfect and she is wonderful. And what matters is that she's healthy. And we have to continue to reinstill that, because the world will try to break her down. They will try to make her feel bad about herself. You build up our kids. We need to build them up, because the world is going to tear them down. So build them up. If you have to tell them 5 million times a day, tell them 5 million times a day how loved they are. because it's the only way to get through this. And do your research, be involved. Don't sit on your butts anymore. Stand up and do something. There are so many avenues to fight back. There's so many ways to do something. Take those steps. Go to the school board meetings. Go to your city council. Go to your county commissions. Go to your state capitol. Do whatever you have to do, but make sure that you stand up for our kids, just like I'm going to be doing. Thank you guys for joining me tonight. I hope that you have an awesome night, a great weekend. And before we go, check out our Pissed Off Patriot line and have a good night.